I remember sitting in my room with a broken laptop. I thought to myself, I failed 8th grade. I have no college degree or even a high school diploma. And I had just Googled how to code for the first time. I just needed a way out of a dead end life, out of being broke, out of feeling like I had already messed everything up before I even got started. Now, 8 years into my coding career, I have worked at a robotics lab and some of the biggest banks and tech companies in the US. But none of that happened because I was smart. It happened because I figured out how to learn things. If you are wondering, are there shortcuts to success? Can you avoid the pain, get a better job, make more money if you just knew what to focus on? That's exactly what I'm going to share with you today. Here are 3 brutally honest bits of advice I wish someone had told me the day I started. If I could give myself just the one piece of advice, it would be the 3rd one on this list. I wish I had known this earlier. I could have saved years of my life from the rat race. Your environment is everything. You might have heard the saying, you are who you surround yourself with. This principle applies to everything we do in life. If you find yourself stuck in a bad job or a team on your journey to becoming a software engineer, it can kill your confidence, growth, and motivation. At this point, you might be thinking, what, I thought learning to code and getting a job was the tricky part, but in fact, it's just the beginning. This is a critical point to understand. It is relevant to everyone, especially if you're just starting out your software engineering journey. I'm going to tell you a personal story that is a great example of why it's important not to fall for this trap. At the start of my career, I got this job in Mission, Kansas. There, one of my coworkers, let's call him Kennedy, a very smart guy, he was better at coding than I was at the time. I realized very quickly that they were working with an old technology stack, and they had a framework unique to this project. If I changed jobs and went somewhere else, learning this framework would be pretty much useless. And they were not using any technologies that were in high demand for employers. Ken stayed there for years. I moved on after 6 months. During that time, I kept in touch with Ken. He was always unhappy about this job, feeling left behind and never getting a chance to learn new frameworks and architectures or even receiving any meaningful raises. Meanwhile, I changed jobs and was getting paid more and had knowledge and experience in a tech stack that companies were willing to pay more for. Got to meet so many cool people and mentors whom I learned everything that made me a better engineer. And he was always afraid that he wouldn't be able to pass the interviews because he didn't know what tech stacks companies were looking for. He was scared to move to a new city away from his family. I was always sure that if he had put himself out there, lots of companies would hire him in a heartbeat. Because he was so good, he was never the problem. The environment was. There are so many cool projects, companies, and people out there that you will never be introduced to if you don't take that chance and leap of faith and do it. I fled a war zone with no money and a plan and moved across the world with no family and friends. It was terrifying. Yeah, of course I went through some hard times, but doing that made me push harder and give that extra effort to make it happen. You don't need to flee a country, but you do need to take that first step. Fight your demons. You're the only one on your way stopping you from achieving what you truly deserve. Step out of your way. If you are stuck in a job because you need the money, trust me, you are leaving money on the table by staying in that job. So here are some red flags to look for. A manager or a boss who never gives feedback. A job with no learning, no mentorship. projects with just bug fixing forever, teams working on outdated tools, building stuff no one really cares about. And it's a burnout factory, unrealistic deadlines, constant pressure, and all of that stuff. And ask yourself these questions like, am I learning anything? Do I have someone I can learn from? Does this team care about growth or just deadlines? Do I feel like a problem solver or just a code monkey? Suppose the answer is an astounding no to any of these questions, you know it's time for a change. Talk to engineers outside of your company. Spend 30 minutes a week exploring job sites and tech stacks that every company is looking for. Build one small project to keep your learning alive. Why you should be focusing on communication more than the coding skills itself. Why does it matter? I used to obsess over syntax, frameworks, and just becoming a great programmer. I believed if I just get great at coding and know my shit, there is no way I don't get a promotion, raise, climb up that corporate ladder. Who wouldn't want someone excellent at what they do, right? For that reason, I always had my headphones on and was writing the most memory efficient and elegant coding solutions I could think of. I was proud of it. And then I started noticing nobody else was actually seeing it, or I was getting any extra credit for all that extra effort. That's because I was not explaining it properly. Everyone else is focused on their own day-to-day task and solving their problems. Anyways, one afternoon after one of the meetings in the conference room, my manager asked, "Hey, can I speak with you two for a minute?" Me and another engineer on the team. And he started with, "I like both of you. You two are great engineers, but both of you are very much focused on the vertical side of this job, going deep into the technical side of things and never focusing on the horizontal side, which includes reaching out to other teams, expanding communications with business and product teams, sharing how you're improving the way we work and solve problems. If I were to promote you two, which I want to, I would need to see these qualities from both of you. Because I would have to prove to my superiors that these guys are capable of proper communication, and communication is a significant factor in management roles." He was a great manager and also a great communicator. This advice is as clear as breathing to me now. I have it on top of my journal because this applies to every aspect of life, including getting ahead in your job, entrepreneurship, prospecting, and more. Because great code doesn't matter if no one understands and if you cannot clearly explain its value. The real value in tech is solving business problems. And those require humans to work together. You don't get paid for how many lines of code you write. You get paid for how clearly you can solve a shared problem. So, what do I mean by communication? It's not just talking more. It's about explaining ideas. For example, here's why I chose this approach, or it's an efficient and elegant solution for these reasons. Asking questions, like what is the main point of this feature? And then actually listen to those answers. So you have a follow-up and so on. Writing clean pull requests, like PR summaries with context and impact. Writing documentation, onboarding notes, code-based explanation, team updates, and status summaries in like Teams or Slack or whatever software you use. Not just the code commits. Handling feedback, staying open and positive when the code is reviewed, taking criticism the right way. If you're a naturally introverted person or English is not your native language, this can be more challenging for you than someone who's an extrovert and speaks perfect English. Alongside learning to code, learn communication skills and read some books on the topic. Watch YouTube videos, practice your speech delivery, pacing, and learn how to expand the range of your vocals so you sound more confident and sure of the things you're saying. The best approach is to read and listen more to better speakers. If you want to get better at writing, read more. If you want to get better at speaking, listen more. Even if it's not about communication, read your favorite books and listen to their audio versions, and practice telling the story as the narrator would. The tone you use matters a lot in how you come across when explaining your thoughts and opinions. This is one of the most important skills you can learn that not only helps you in your coding journey, but also in every other aspect of life, relationships, friendships, and business. Anyways, let's be real. You can be a world-class engineer and still retire broke. But if you learn how money actually works, you only need to be decent at your job. And that's exactly what I'll talk about next. Coding pays you, but investing sets you free. I remember that specific Sunday morning. It's around 5 a.m. and I'm sitting at a bar in a diner in Dallas, Texas. After driving for Uber all weekend, day and night with bare minimum sleep during the weekend, thinking to myself, once I get this coding thing figured out, I can get a 6-figure job and get out of this bullshit forever. Both of these things happened. I did learn coding and got a job. But one question I keep coming back to was, am I free? Do I have the freedom to do things how I want, or do whatever I want, spend more time with kids and family, and travel more? The answer has always been somewhat no, not entirely. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the life that coding has given me. It's respectful, job that pays decently, and has opened so many doors and opportunities for me. As a first-generation immigrant, it's a dream come true. But ever since I was a kid, I always wanted to be rich and have a lot of money. It all started with my dad not buying a car for our family. My dad being a responsible father considering all the expenses of running a household with kids. He thought we couldn't afford a car, and it was like that for many things. We couldn't afford anything. So me being the eldest of my siblings, I always thought we were poor. We couldn't afford shit. Even though by the grace of God, thank you God, we had food and shelter and all the basic necessities of life, unlike many unfortunate people around the world. So I thought to myself, I want to be rich and want to be able to afford nice things that my family and I would want. Anyways, one day my dad came home and told my mom that he had done a really bad business deal and had lost everything we owned. Our home, business, and everything. So I thought my father was being so careful with spending and was being stingy with money. Still, we lost everything. And now we have nothing. I came up with millions of questions about money. Why is money so important? Why did it happen to my family and us? Was the real problem that we didn't have enough money? If we had more money, even though he had lost some, could we still rebuild? These questions and way of thinking were just set in stone for me for years, and has always been at the forefront of my mind when thinking about life and everything I have done so far. As a result of all of that happening, I had to quit going to school during my 8th grade and start working to help out my family. And I have been working ever since to find the answers to the questions I asked myself as a kid. How can I get rich and not let money be the problem ever again? I sometimes feel that the concept of wanting to be rich is frowned upon or considered something bad, but I'm not ashamed of it. Like many of you and the society we are conditioned in, I thought a great career would set me free. So I figured if I become a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer, I would be okay. So, with no college degree or school or any traditional education credentials, coding was my only way to become an engineer. But after working for 8 years of my life, I still am not where I set out to be. This was until I learned the principles of money and wealth in 2020. This was during one of the biggest health and financial crises we have faced as a society. I remember driving through a very fancy neighborhood in Dallas and seeing these beautiful houses and thinking, what do they do for living to afford these houses and live like this? The more I looked into this, the more I realized that all of these people own businesses and real estate. And all this time, society has been telling us to go to college, have a career, get a nice job, which is basically telling us to train so we can work for one of these people who are no smarter than you and I. They just have a different perspective on money and life. They are bold and they're courageous. They take actions and risks. They fail and learn from those failures instead of being afraid of failures. And guess what? How do they multiply their money? If you guessed investments, you're already way better than I was 5 years ago. So if you don't just want to live paycheck to paycheck and don't care about that fancy titles that come with jobs, I suggest that instead of spending those years learning and training for a job to work for someone else, learn stock and real estate market. This is where people with fancy houses focus and spend their time learning. One of the biggest mistakes of mine was thinking that you need money to invest and make money. While it's true to some extent, there are many successful people who prove that it's not the case. I failed to realize that anything that pays, the first step is learning, training and understanding, and then the reward comes next. If you stick around and obsessively follow its principles, then it will happen. That was definitely the case with learning coding. So even if you don't have the money to invest, step one is learning and understanding the investing, money, and business principles. Because the stock market is the business of businesses. You buy and sell businesses. Most people think it's buying and selling stocks. And that's why they only look at the stock price instead of evaluating the whole business when deciding to purchase a business. And that's exactly why I also really like commercial real estate, where you deal with small businesses and the real properties that these businesses conduct business on. I recently got my real estate license here in the state of Texas. I'm starting my journey in the world of commercial real estate market. And I have been in the stock market since 2019. I've made a lot of money from the stock market and also lost a significant amount. But failures are just the way to try something different. It is the same try and catch concept in programming. If you don't know anything about investing and markets, start with some books and YouTube channels. Many creators and entrepreneurs on this platform have some great lessons for free. And you don't even need to pay for the course or anything. Learn public companies. Learn the basics of income statement, balance sheet, cash flow statement. This will help evaluate these businesses. Study a few companies in the same sector and compare them with others in the same sector. Learn about different sectors. One of the greatest investors of all time, Warren Buffett, you can learn so much just by reading his autobiography. All of this information is useless if you don't know how to apply these concepts in real life and go about learning and then taking action. Because at the end of the day, actions are what matters and make up the biggest part of the learning process. So I will be posting real examples of these principles on this channel specifically for commercial real estate and stock market. Subscribe and follow the journey. Let's get rich together. Thanks for watching and see you guys on the next one.